Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Matt here. I've got a fun one for you this time. We're doing an all resin sign with encased faux flowers and faux jungle style plants for a local company here in town. They're a realtor brokerage and we're going to be doing an interior sign for them. It's going to be super fun. I've never done anything like this before, so I'm curious to see how it turns out. It's the first time using 2-pound foam as a mold, so you'll see the process through and through. Let's get started. So for this first part of the process, I'm taping up with a Tyvek tape. I've got 2-pound foam that I had cut out by a wire cutter from a local sign shop, Signorama here in Reading. Any sign shop would probably do this for you. You just have to send them your DXF file or whatever file that they take. I've learned that you'll see later in the video that you're definitely going to want to overlap the Tyvek tape. That way there's no possible way for the air to seep through the tape joint. You can see I'm silicone in the bottom, putting some pressure and some weight on them so they cure. That way there's no seepage from the resin. After each one was silicone down, you can see on my phone, that is the company's logo. It's Jungle Realty, and I was really trying to match the color scheme with all of the different colored plants and different colored flowers. And for the G and the L, you can see I'm using some fake branches right here, and it's kind of cool because they gave me a little bit of creative freedom to create something unique, and I thought it'd be kind of sweet to do a little leaf growing out of the branch right there. I find that using a CA glue really helps the process and make it go quicker. I use Starbond myself, but any CA glue would work for you. Some advice I would have after doing this, I would definitely get your mold to be at least a ½ inch taller than what you want your finished product to be. It'll definitely help if there's any discrepancies that come up, like I did with a few of the molds you'll see here in a little bit. I didn't overlap the tape properly, and I had retraction and some air pockets seep through, and I had to redo a couple of these. Every plant and flower that you see here I did buy online. They are fake, they're not real. I was going to use real, but because the logo had so many different variations of color, I wanted to make sure that I was able to nail it. Not only nail it, but have it to be true for a long time. I know that if I use real flowers, that over time they would have discolored for sure. Okay, so the molds are all done. All the flowers are placed where I want them. They match the logo really well. I'm going to mix up some Superclear tabletop epoxy. I'm going to throw it in a warm bath because it's so cold out. This really helps the viscosity be much thinner for the mixing process, to get less bubbles and for it to be more manageable. I'm going to go down and put little drops here and there throughout each letter and each flower. That way when I do the full casting, I won't have anything that floats. If I was to do all of these over again, I would probably do a really thin layer, probably like a 1/16 of an inch. That way if you had any discrepancy on the mold itself where the silicone was, you almost 100% guarantee that that would seal it. I did have a few issues with the U and the N that you'll see here in a little bit. So that would be the only thing that I would change other than overlapping the Tyvek tape. I'm going to list everything below that I used here: the 2-pound foam, the Tyvek tape, the degassing chamber, kind of like I do with every video. So if anything sparks your interest, make sure to hit the bio. All the links will be listed there for you guys to go and purchase. So this project took, I believe, 4 kits of the liquid glass. These were super thick and the letters are actually quite big. Throwing them in the degassing chamber here to make sure all the bubbles are out. I took my time with this when I was pouring them in. I took an additional quartz cup, just scooped out however much would fit in it, slowly poured it along the little stick there to work as kind of like a slide. It really helps prevent bubbles, and I know that not everyone has a degassing chamber, so if that's the case, then you can use this method and it will really help you minimize any micro bubbles in your final product. So do me a favor, hit the comments below and let me know what letter is your favorite. To me, I think the J looks the coolest. It may just be the really vibrant blue flowers that are kind of screaming at you, but I'd really love to hear what you guys think. If you're going to do a project like this and you wanted to use real flowers, that's absolutely okay. Just be mindful of the moisture content in those flowers. I would recommend having them sit in silica gel for a week or two. That way, once the resin cures, you won't get any moisture release from the flowers or the plants that you use. Okay, it's the next day. Everything's setting up nice, but we did have a problem in the U and the N. I did these molds a little different. I didn't overlap the tape, so all of these bubbles and retraction started to seep out of the joints. I've got a few in the big one too, but they're all going to sand out, so I'm not worried about it. See how the bubbles kind of start coming out. And I didn't seal the bottom of this very good too. You can see it started seeping out through the foam. Okay, so we're day 2. I just popped this one out of the mold, and I knew there was going to be texture from the tape, the Tyvek tape. So I plan to sand that out to about 320 on all the side profile edges, front and the back. And then we're going to do a tabletop epoxy pour over the top and the back, and it'll look, should look super clean. But look at that. Pretty trippy. But here's where I went wrong. On the U and the N, I didn't overlap the tape. Bubbles started, or not bubbles, air started seeping out or sucking into the resin as it was kicking off, because there's gaps between each of those tape joints. So I'm going to redo the N and the U. As you can see, I got some leaks, so I used some flex paste. Actually worked pretty good. But the issue was, for sure, I mean, temperature was really good. It was just the tape, because I know on these I overlapped the tape a lot better, but you can still see a couple bubbles come through, but that'll all sand out and it'll all melt in. So I started sanding away on the J, and I had to actually bust out the Dremel to get rid of some of the bubbles that showed up through the mold. After everything was sanded and Dremeled out, I took the tabletop epoxy and did really small layers to fill in any voids that I Dremeled out or raise up any low spots that were left from the tape. Something that I forgot to mention was I used Smooth On mold release spray after everything was silicone down. As you can see, everything's releasing pretty well. I had to be really careful with those little spots where the branches are, but overall it released really well from both the bottom and from the actual tape and foam parts. One of the things to be careful with is if you're using a rubber mallet like I was to remove the foam, be careful with some of the back sides of the resin pieces. You're going to get some resin that seeped under the mold, and you could get some breakout or some tear out on the back side of the letters, so just be really cognizant of that. Okay, here we go. Sanding, Dremel, sanding, Dremel. I wanted to try and salvage the U and the N, but unfortunately I wasn't so lucky. This took forever, but definitely worth the payoff in the end. Just make sure you're patient and take your time. We have re-poured the U and the N. Did the layout exactly the same. Freshly poured. So what I did this time is I taped the bottom, the sides, the top, pretty much everything. That way there's no foam exposed. Because what was happening is the resin, once it started kicking off, it started pulling air through the 2-pound foam. I also overlapped all the tape on each joint, so that should do the trick. And then I also elevated it so we got some airflow. Right about 3 inches thick. I'm going to throw a fan on it, and it should be good. Alright, back to more sanding and fine tuning. Put it in the wood vise and really got down and dirty. 80 grit all the way up to 320 grit on every piece. I was also able to use my Mirka on the flat parts, which made light work of that. Moving on to the Supermax, get everything nice and flat and the same thickness. Now this is what you've all been waiting for. This is the final and top coat on the U and the N. So what I did is I turned them over. On the back side I did a real light coat with a brush, just a little throwaway brush from Home Depot, and brushed it. Did a really good job of getting all the bubbles out. Flipped it over, and now I'm doing a full top coat. What I learned is that if you just take the brush the sides, get everything just coated, your heat gun's really going to help melt in, and as you see, once I start using it, it'll really push over any excess from the top onto the sides, and it'll just drip down. You will have to, and you'll see here in a little bit, after everything's cured, flip it over, sand everything off, and use my polishing process to get the backside up to a sheen that the top is. I found that using a torch for this part of the process was not ideal. It just got too hot too fast, and with the heat gun you're really able to kind of get in, and it's just a little bit more manageable to not use too much heat, but just enough to where it makes the viscosity really thin and flow over, as you can see on some of the sides there. So in my opinion, the results you get with just the top coat, if you sand everything properly, it is sufficient for a final product. But there were a few spots on all of the pieces that I just wasn't quite happy with. So after all of these cured, you'll see here in the next couple slides that I polished all of them from start to finish. So this big G and L was the bane of my existence. There were so many little nooks and crannies that I had to go through. I spent weeks and weeks sanding out, refilling with tabletop, waiting a day for it to cure, and then repeating that process over and over. I ended up being super happy with the result. As you can see, I'm fine tuning it, prepping it with all the right grades, cleaning it with isopropyl alcohol, which is pretty ideal before you do any sort of recoat. Okay, so we got this one all done after weeks and weeks of hand sanding. There's going to be some spots on some of these edges that are going to be really visible that I'll have to sand and polish out. But overall, pretty sick. It's pretty cold in here. It's like 50 degrees, so after 2 days we'll cut and polish all of it and start making the brackets. Okay guys, here they are. They are almost near complete. There's a few touch-ups that I need to do here and there. And then I'm just going to make some small brackets so they sit on the shelf for the client, but that won't be for a few weeks. But this is going to be pretty much the final product. Not pretty awesome. I don't know, let me know what you think. Did I nail the color scheme? I'll put the logo below and you can shoot me a comment. Well guys, that's a wrap. Really appreciate you watching this far. It's been a really fun project. I love being able to do things that I haven't done before and show the process along the way. So hit that subscribe button. I've got a ton of fun videos planned for next year, so stay tuned and get out there and build something. Cheers.